Hello YouTube, Red Reptiles here with another video, and in today's video I'm going to talk to you about snake anatomy and snake behavior. This is an AP psychology project as well, so might as well make it a double whammy. So hope you all enjoyed today's video and let's get started. Alright guys, so to start off, meet Sparky. Sparky is my male albino ball python. Many of you have met him before, and just for the ones that are meeting him now, he's a very nice snake. So Sparky is going to be one of the many examples in today's video so I can explain to you about snake anatomy and behavior. But just to start off, you need to know about the snake's anatomical map, which is basically anything that the snake is consisted of from the inside. So snakes are basically one long tube which can be split up into 4 quarters. The first quarter consists of the head, the esophagus, and the trachea and the heart. The second quarter consists of the top of the lungs, the liver, and the stomach. In the third quarter, you encounter the gallbladder, the spleen, the pancreas, and gonads, which are the testes and ovaries. Lastly, in the fourth quarter, you can find the small and large intestine, the cecum, the kidneys, and the cloaca. Just like humans, snakes do have a lot of organs, but their organs take the shape of their body. So basically, anything that they have and carry inside of them is going to be more elongated. Just like everything else in the world, snakes have outer beauty too. Unlike other reptiles, snakes do not have legs, meaning that they lack a pectoral girdle, which is the shoulder bones, and a pelvic girdle, which is the rear leg support. Over time, due to evolutionary reasons, snakes have lost their arms and legs, meaning that they could have developed from other lizards and other sorts of creatures that did have arms and legs. So as part of their anatomy, they do not carry any frontal or rear moving devices except for their muscles along their bodies. Alright, so first off, I'm not crazy, I'm just here to educate you guys about snake shed. So to start off, snake shed is basically made of keratin, which is the same material as your fingernails and your hair. So just like how our hair and our fingernails constantly grow, snake skin itself is actually growing, so therefore the shed happens, and the shed derives from the epidermis. So it sheds off that thin layer maybe once a month. Sometimes even takes longer, 2 or 3 months in the time, depends on how the snake is. Snakes never stop growing, so that's why there's always shed being taken from the snakes. So as everyone knows, snakes are covered in scales which offer protection from desiccation and injury. The thin layer of a scale is called an epidermis, which is shed on a regular basis. The layer under the epidermis is called the dermis, which is filled with chromatophores, the pigment cells that give snakes color. As you guys can see here, this snake is very dark, so therefore it's filled with more chromatophores than usual. Now, like I said, snakes shed on a regular basis. This is one of the sheds that I've kept over time from one of my big boas. It's not from this snake itself, but just it was a good example because it's a more impressive, and it has the larger scales, as you guys can see. So this is the top layer, which would be the epidermis, and then these are the top scales, and then on the bottom these are the ventral scales, which are the belly of the snake. Now this is all the epidermis, and under it would be the dermis, which is just basically the thickness of the skin that is under the snake. Alright, so for this part of the video, I'm going to talk to you about snake's head features, and I'm going to bring out the biggest snake that I own, which is this guy. This guy's also plastic, and due to the reason that I will be touching his head, and I do not want to get bit because, danger, danger. Now, snakes do not have eyelids, rather they have a spectacle that is part of the skin which protects their eyes. So, in an example, the yellow dot would have a clear spectacle over it, which is also shed off periodically with the shed of the snake, which is connected to the skin, and it comes off with the epidermis. Now, snakes lack an external ear, so that means there's no pokey thing sticking out of the head. Rather, the ear is inside, so it makes it internal. And they can detect low-frequency sounds ranging from 100 to 700 hertz. A snake's inner ear also allows it to detect motion, static position, and sound waves traveling through the ground. So, for example, you're walking through the wilderness. Actually, I'm going to make an example for you. Picture the snake. This isn't his little burrow. You're in the wild. Now you're coming along, and you don't see the snake, but the snake can see you, not visually, but he can detect you just because of the static position and the sound waves traveling through the ground. So you're making sound waves that go throughout the ground, and the snake can pick it up just because it has such very high detectiveness, and the snake knows where you are even before you know where it is. Also, a snake's head contains its eyes, its nostrils, the mouth, the brain, and a special sensory structure called the Jacobson organ. Now, the Jacobson organ, which is also connected to it's on the roof of the mouth of the snake, and the tongue basically, which is also forked, just so you guys know, it picks up minute air particles, like scent particles in the air, and it places them in direct contact with this organ. So, instead of kind of smelling through its nostrils, it smells through that organ. Alright, so now moving on to snake behaviors. The most important behavior a snake can have is tongue flicking. Snakes use their tongues to smell because their sight and hearing is quite limited. Snakes have distinct types of tongue flicks. So slow and controlled flicks means that the snake is taken in surroundings and assessing the environment. Short, rapid tongue flips usually indicate something has grabbed the snake's attention, like food or movement. usually leading to head wiggling, which means that the snake has smelled something new or interesting. So as you guys can see here, these are long and slow and, you know, more concentrated tongue flicks. So she herself is being like, yo, what's going on? I was just pulled out of my racking system. You know, she's assessing the environment. She's just gaining control of her situation and what's actually going on with her. Alright, so secondary to snake's actual tongue flicking, the best indicator of or how to detect the behavior of a snake is also when it sheds, because, you know, when you're going through a stressful situation, just like shedding for a snake, they don't want to be bothered. So in order to understand that, we have to know what to look for. So the best indicator for when a snake is shedding is its eye color, and meaning that it's not going to change from like blue to green or, you know, brown to hazel. The actual eye color just becomes more dull and, you know, has a bluish tint to it. So when a snake is going through a shed, reptile keepers as myself, we like to call it like going through a blue phase. That's because the snake itself will have a duller whitish bluish tint to it. So this one here itself is not going through a shed, but if it was, you could kind of notice it just because the eyes would be a lot darker and a lot more, you know, blurred up, and the skin would be a lot duller. Here's a good example of what I mean when a snake is going through a blue shed, or like a, you know, a blue phase like I called it before. You know, the snake is a lot more duller in color. Like for example, these reds would be a lot brighter, but in this case, since it's gonna shed its skin, it's, you know, it's a lot darker. So that's what I mean, because it has like a kind of bluish hue to it. So the next behavior I want to talk about is yawning. So when a snake yawns, it isn't as a sleepiness, but instead it's another way for them to smell their surroundings on a larger scale. Snakes can also yawn to stretch their jaws. So, you know, snakes, they don't yawn when they're like, oh, I'm about to go to sleep, or I'm about to go nap time, or like, you know, you just studied for an AP test and you're tired. But they yawn just to, it's a better way to smell their area rather than just how they do the tongue flicking, like I said before. So when they yawn and they open their mouth, all the particles land on their Jacobson's organ, and they really intake their environment. So the last behavior I want to explain is basically coiling into the S shape. So most snakes, when they coil into an S shape, it's not a sign of aggression. In fact, it's more of a defense mechanism, and it allows them to strike if they need. So snakes also can coil their head backs if they get scared. So for example, if I do this to the snake, you see how it's going back and it forms that S shape. It's because the snake is more scared of me and it's not really interested in biting me. So we have to remember that snakes and animals in general bite out of fear because they can't communicate with words, so they communicate through their behaviors. So I hope you all enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something new about snake anatomy and some tips on snake behavior. You know, I really enjoyed making the video, and, you know, I enjoyed making the project for you guys that are watching in the classroom. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and subscribe, rate, comment, likes, and see you, my fellow harpers.